Hello and welcome back to our little anime lit club. Today we are going to discuss volume 1 of Monthly in the Garden with My Landlord. This is a cozy slice of life Yuri manga by Yodokawa and it's published in English by Yen Press. Today I will be covering spoilers for volume 1, so just keep that in mind. So, where to start with this one? Well, I guess I'll start with my first impressions. So far, I'm really enjoying the series. The two main leads are really wholesome and sweet, and I'm excited to see their relationship grow. I also really like the art style and the general vibe of the premise. So far, the story feels like the kind of warm, wholesome story you would find on like the Hallmark Channel, and trust me, that's not a dig against it. The moment when Suga introduced Kitano and to her friend who was a big fan of her idol persona, it felt exactly like in those Christmas movies when someone introduces Santa to their friend, or like those Christmas prince slash princess movies where they introduce Her Majesty, quote unquote, to their New York baker friend slash pal. It's just a fun, heartwarming moment, and there's a certain degree of wish fulfillment in it with everyone's reactions and the entire interaction going really positively, and I just really love that type of story. In general, I also really like the premise so far, which is weird because I will be bringing up the premise in my criticism section, but it's sort of like I like part of it and I dislike another part of it. But while I have some issues with the finer details, the idea of a recently retired idol and a burned out manga editor both sharing a house together is just a really awesome premise, and I'm excited to see where the story goes. But having said that, I kind of just realized that I never really explained the actual premise of the series yet, so let me get into that now. So, this series follows Atsuko Suga, a manga editor who has been having a rough time in the romance market, and Moyako Kintano, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who is a recently retired idol. After a bad breakup, Suga decides to change things up in her life and checks out a rental home. She's surprised to find that the landlord is a young, attractive woman. And there's two main things to keep in mind with Suga. One, she's too kind and giving for her own good, and two, she has a total weakness for attractive women. So when Suga finds out that this landlord is actually planning on living in the house with her, she initially tries to back out, but ultimately caves to her new landlord's puppy eyes. As previously mentioned, Kintano, the landlord, is a recently retired idol from a really successful idol group. She's kind of lazy and really not good with chores and seems to be just trying to figure out her new life. It's still not clear in the story why she retired, but there seems to be some baggage there. As you can probably guess, Kintano quickly becomes very dependent on Suga, and Suga knows that she should set proper boundaries, etc., but she kind of can't help herself when it comes to Kintano since, again, she's an attractive young woman. And that kind of brings me to where some of my criticisms are and sort of the main points that I want to discuss today. So, the relationship between the two leads is a bit strange because I'm not quite sure yet where it lands. It seems to lean towards romantic interest, but ultimately, there's some weird baggage that needs to be unpacked with their sort of dynamic. So, first of all, on a slightly silly note, the actual dynamic between these two leads kept kind of annoying me as I was reading the story. Maybe it's because I have to rent a very small space, but the fact that Kintano is the landlord rather than a roommate was really bugging me with this one. So, on the one hand, I can appreciate that it's a quirky and unique setup, which makes the story feel less generic and more unique. However, anytime that Kintano is like eating food or not doing chores or hanging out around the house, I just get annoyed on behalf of Suga because if Kintano is like a roommate and paying someone else, like a third party, an equal rate for rent, then sharing meals and stuff like that feels more like a partnership. But the fact that Kintano is charging Suga to stay in a place that Kintano gets to stay for free, and then Kintano also like eats Suga's food and expects Suga to do all of the cleaning, etc., is genuinely very annoying in this current rental economy we find ourselves in. Maybe this means I'm not as good of a person as Suga, but I could like never deal with this sort of dynamic. I think part of the reason why it feels so glaring too is because Suga seems to get annoyed by Kintano at times and seems to want alone time, etc. So it's not like she's 100% okay with it. As a result, I do hope that we eventually get to see their dynamic change to them being more like roommates. When the grandmother stops by and reveals that the house is actually her house, I was hoping she would fix the arrangement, but I'm not so sure anymore because I think that Suga is still going to owe rent. And again, I understand that this is a cozy slice of life manga and that things like this shouldn't really be taken that seriously, but I still had to get it off my chest. Then, the next aspect of the relationship that I want to discuss has to do more with the emotional cores of the two main characters. So, Suga keeps acknowledging that she should set boundaries around Kintano, but then keeps failing to do this. The thing is, however, is that in previous relationships, Suga didn't set proper boundaries, which ultimately led to heartbreak. So, usually in a romance like this, you would have a character who always has their walls up and then learns to lower their walls and fall in love. But here, the character usually has their walls down and is now thinking that they should raise their walls to improve themselves. So, maybe it will end with them realizing that there's nothing wrong with what they were doing before and that they just had the wrong partner, but I don't know, it's kind of a weird trajectory for a character. Then, with Kintano, she seems to be relying on Suga as a sort of older sister vibe slash live-in maid, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be a romance, so I'm not really sure how that's going to balance out. Kintaro seems to have some sort of past trauma with her idol life, and since Suga is the type of person who's always going after attractive women, she kind of seems closer to like a fan type personality than the type of personality that might heal Kintaro. So there's just kind of a weird setup here. Here's the thing though. I can't really criticize things yet since I don't know where the story is going. I guess it would be better to say that I am concerned about it not sticking the landing, but I'm still very hopeful that this story will prove me wrong. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to cover today. I really enjoyed Volume 1, and I might make this a complete series where I cover the next 4 volumes in the very near future since I'm genuinely pretty invested in this story. So if you want to be notified when the next episode is out, please consider subscribing. Also, if you enjoyed today's video, it would mean the world to me if you could give the video a like. But yeah, with that being said, I'm going to wrap things up. So take care and I will see you in the next one.